I'm Robert, 32, and my sister tried to claim my unborn child as her own property. Before I tell you about the police cars flashing in front of my parents' driveway and the restraining orders, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I read every single one of them. It was a Tuesday, just a regular, humid Tuesday in late July. The kind of day where the air feels heavy, sticking to your skin the moment you step outside. I remember the specific texture of the air because it was the last moment of peace I had before the storm broke. I was behind the wheel of my Porsche Panamera. Now, I don't say that to brag. I grew up in a house where appearances were everything, but substance was thin. That car was the first thing I bought with my own money, from my own landscape architecture firm, without a dime of help from the people who raised me. It was my sanctuary. The leather seats were cool, the cabin was quiet, and sitting in the passenger seat was my whole world. Sarah. Sarah was 6 months pregnant. She had that glow people always talk about, but she also had the exhaustion that comes with carrying a future linebacker. Her hand was resting on her stomach, and she was humming along to the radio. We had just come from the OBGYN. The ultrasound pictures were tucked into her purse. Black and white grainy proof that I was going to be a dad. "He has your nose, Rob," she had teased me in the elevator. Poor kid. I laughed. Hey, my nose gives me character. We were happy. We were safe. We had cut the toxic roots out of our lives 3 years ago, and we had flourished because of it. Or so I thought. I dropped Sarah off at our front door. She kissed my cheek. "Don't work too late. Your son wants pizza tonight." "Yes, ma'am," I saluted. I watched her walk inside, lock the door, and wave through the window. I waited until the lights flickered on in the living room. It was a habit I couldn't break. This need to make sure she was secure. Once she was safe, I put the car in reverse to head to a site visit. That's when my phone buzzed. It wasn't a call, just a text. It connected to the car's Bluetooth, displaying the message on the dashboard screen. The name that popped up made my stomach drop so hard I felt nauseous. Mom. I hadn't seen that name on my screen in 3 years. Not since the wedding. Not since the day I chose my wife over their madness. The message was short. "Pick up. It's a matter of life or death. Brenda is in the hospital." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. My knuckles turned white. My heart hammered against my ribs, not out of concern, but out of a conditioned reflex of panic. Brenda, my older sister, the golden child, the center of their universe. If Brenda was in the hospital, it usually meant she had stubbed her toe and needed an audience, or she had a panic attack because the barista got her order wrong. But life or death? My parents were dramatic, but they usually saved that phrase for actual emergencies. I stared at the screen. The engine idled, a low purr that usually calmed me down, but now it sounded like a countdown. Do I ignore it? I should ignore it. I have a wife. I have a baby on the way. I have a life that doesn't involve their chaos. But the guilt, God, the guilt is a hook that never really comes out, does it? It's embedded deep in the muscle. If she was actually dying, and I drove away, could I live with that? I pulled the car over to the curb, 2 streets away from my house so Sarah wouldn't see me. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the new leather, trying to anchor myself in my reality, not theirs. I hit the call button. It rang once. Robert. My mother's voice. She didn't sound frantic. She sounded calculated, cold. "You finally answered. You said life or death, Mom. Is Brenda dying?" I didn't bother with pleasantries. "She's in the psych ward, Robert," my mother said, her voice dropping to a whisper, implying that this was somehow my fault. She tried to hurt herself again. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is she stable?" "Stable?" My mother scoffed. "She's devastated. She's broken. And do you know why?" "I haven't spoken to her in 3 years, Mom. So no, I don't know why." "Because she wants a baby," my mother said, as if that explained everything. "She's been trying for 3 years. IVF, specialists, healers. She spent every penny of her inheritance. Her uterus is scarred, Robert. She can't carry. The doctor told her yesterday it's over. She will never be a biological mother." I felt a pang of sympathy. Truly, I did. Infertility is a tragedy. I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone, even Brenda. That's terrible, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I hope she gets the help she needs. She doesn't need therapy, Robert. My father's voice boomed in the background. He must have been listening on speaker. She needs family. She needs hope. We saw the post. My mother cut in. My blood ran cold. What post? The one your cousin Tom shared. The gender reveal. You're having a boy. I cursed under my breath. I knew I shouldn't have let Sarah's excitement override my caution. We had kept the pregnancy off social media, but we had a small gathering for friends, and Tom, my neutral cousin, had been there. He must have posted a photo. Okay, I said slowly. Yes, we are. Brenda saw it, Mom said. That's why she's in the hospital. She saw you happy with a baby, while she has nothing. I broke her, Robert. You broke her. I didn't do anything to her. I snapped, my patience fraying. I am living my life. Her inability to conceive is tragic, but it is not my fault. We need to meet, my father said. Tonight. Come to the house. No, I said instantly. I'm not coming there. Robert, please. My mother's voice cracked. It was a performance I had heard 1,000 times, but it was effective. Just listen to us. We have a solution. A way to fix this family. A way to save your sister. Don't you want your son to know his grandparents? Don't you want to heal this? I looked out the window. A kid was riding his bike down the sidewalk, carefree. That's what I wanted for my son. A life without strings. What solution? I asked, suspicion narrowing my eyes. Not over the phone, Dad said. Come for dinner. Just listen. If you don't like what we have to say, you can leave and we'll never bother you again. We promise. But Brenda, she needs this. She needs the baby. She needs the baby. The phrasing was odd. Not, she needs to see the baby, or, she needs support. She needs the baby. I'm not bringing Sarah, I said firmly. Fine. Just you. 7 p.m. Don't be late. Click. I sat there in the silence of my car for a long time. The sun was starting to dip lower, casting long shadows across the dashboard. My instinct screamed at me to turn the car around, drive home, lock the doors, and block the number. But the phrase inheritance stuck in my head. My parents were wealthy, but they were leveraged. If Brenda had blown through her money, and now they were desperate, desperation makes people dangerous. I needed to know what they were planning. I needed to know the threat level so I could build the right wall to keep them out. I texted Sarah. Project went long. Going to grab a late dinner with a client. Love you. It was the first lie I had told her in years. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. The stress was bad for the baby. I had to handle this alone. I started the engine. The Porsche roared to life, a deep, aggressive growl. I turned the car toward the wealthy, manicured suburb where I grew up, into the belly of the beast. As I drove, my mind drifted back. I needed to remember exactly who these people were. I needed to remind myself why I had left. I needed to remember the wedding, to understand why my stomach churned as I drove toward my parents' estate. You have to understand the day I got married. Or rather, the day Brenda tried to ensure I didn't. 3 years ago, Sarah and I had planned a beautiful, intimate ceremony at a vineyard. It wasn't about showing off. It was about celebrating us. But from the moment we announced the engagement, Brenda was a nightmare. At that time, Brenda was married to Greg. Poor Greg. He was a decent guy, a mechanic who worked hard and loved her, though I never understood why. They had been trying for a baby for a year with no luck. When I announced I was getting married, Brenda took it as a personal attack. How can you celebrate when I am suffering? She had screamed at the engagement dinner. But the wedding day, that was a masterclass in narcissism. I was standing at the altar, sweating in my tuxedo. The guests were seated. The music started. I looked down the aisle expecting to see Sarah. Instead, I heard a commotion at the back. Brenda had arrived. She wasn't a bridesmaid. She wasn't in the wedding party. But but she walked down the center aisle crying hysterically. And she was wearing white. Not a cream cocktail dress. Not a pale yellow suit. A full-blown, floor-length, lace white gown that looked suspiciously like a wedding dress she might have repurposed. The entire congregation gasped. I saw Sarah's mother, Helen, stand up in the front row, her face turning a shade of purple I didn't know existed. Brenda stumbled to the front, right before the altar, and collapsed into my parents' arms. "I can't take it," she wailed, loud enough for the people in the back row to hear. "He's leaving me. My baby brother is leaving me alone in this world." My father, instead of dragging her out, patted her back soothingly. My mother looked at me with eyes that said, "Do something, you monster." "Brenda, get up," I hissed, stepping down from the altar. "This is Sarah's moment. Get out." "You're so selfish," Brenda screamed, her mascara running down her face. "I told you I was feeling suicidal this morning. I told Mom, and you still went ahead with this? You don't care if I live or die." The music stopped. The guests were murmuring. It was a train wreck. Then Sarah appeared at the top of the aisle. She stopped. She saw Brenda in the white dress, screaming on the ground. She saw my parents coddling her. I saw Sarah's shoulders slump. The light went out of her eyes. I turned to my father. "Dad, get her out of here. Now." My father looked at me, his jaw set. "Robert, look at your sister. She's in crisis. We need to leave. We need to take her to the hospital." "Then go," I said. "Take her. I'm staying here to marry my wife." "We took the limo," my mother said, frantic. "The driver left. We need a car. Robert, give us the keys to the getaway car." I had rented a Lamborghini Huracan for the weekend. It was a surprise for Sarah. We were supposed to drive away in it after the reception. It was parked right outside, gleaming in the sun. "Are you joking?" I asked, my voice trembling with rage. "You want me to give you the wedding car so you can drive Brenda away? Call an Uber." "She can't wait for an Uber," Brenda shrieked. "I need to go now. I feel like I'm going to hurt myself." "Give her the keys, Robert," my father commanded. It was the voice he used when I was 10 and I had broken a window. The voice of absolute authority. I looked at them. I looked at Brenda, who was peering at me through her fingers, checking to see if her performance was working. Then I looked up the aisle at Sarah. She was standing there, alone, holding her bouquet so tight her knuckles were white. That was the moment. The split in the timeline. "No," I said. My father blinked. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated louder. "You are not taking my car. You are not ruining this moment more than you already have. If you want to leave, walk. If you don't help us," my mother hissed, "we are done. Do you understand? You are choosing a stranger over your own blood." "Sarah is my family," I said, my voice steady for the first time that day. "You guys? I don't know what you are anymore, but you're not family." I turned my back on them. I walked up the aisle to Sarah. I took her hand. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "Do you still want to do this?" She looked past me at my parents and sister, who were storming out, creating a scene, knocking over a flower arrangement on purpose as they left. "Yes," Sarah said, tears in her eyes, "but only if they never come back." "I promise," I said. We got married. The reception was awkward at first, but once the toxic cloud lifted, it was actually a blast. We danced. We drank. We drove away in that Lamborghini, and for 3 years we didn't look back. But now, as I pulled up to the wrought iron gates of my parents' house, the memory of that white dress and that emotional blackmail made my skin crawl. The house looked the same. Large, imposing, cold. A monument to their ego. My father's car was in the driveway, a Mercedes S-Class, 5 years old now. Beside it was my mother's Lexus. And there, parked crookedly on the lawn, was Brenda's car. A bright red convertible that my parents had bought her for her 30th birthday to cheer her up after her divorce. Wait, if Brenda was in the psych ward, why was her car here? The lie. The first lie of the night. I parked my Porsche on the street. I wasn't going to get boxed in. I wanted a clear exit route. I walked up the long driveway. The landscaping was immaculate. My father paid a fortune for it, probably more than he paid his employees. I rang the doorbell. It opened immediately. My mother stood there. She looked older, more tired. Her makeup was thick, trying to hide the lines of stress. "Robert," she said, reaching out to hug me. I stepped back. "Where's Brenda? You said she was in the hospital." My mother didn't even flinch at the rejection of the hug. She just smiled a tight, practiced smile. "She was discharged. We brought her home to recover. She's in the living room. Come in." I walked into the foyer. It smelled of expensive potpourri and judgment. The house was silent. Too silent. "Robert." My father appeared from the hallway. He was holding a glass of scotch. "Glad you came to your senses." "I'm here to listen," I said, keeping my hands in my pockets. "You have 30 minutes. Then I'm going home to my pregnant wife." My father's eye twitched at the mention of Sarah. "Right? The wife. Come, sit down." We walked into the formal living room, and there she was, Brenda. She was sitting on the velvet sofa, wrapped in a cashmere blanket. She didn't look like someone who had just tried to end her life. She looked expectant. She was scrolling on her phone, sipping tea. When she saw me, she dropped the phone and put on a sad face so quickly it was almost impressive. "Robbie," she whispered. "It's Robert," I corrected. "I haven't been Robbie since I was 12. I didn't sit. I stood by the fireplace, keeping the high ground. "Okay, I'm here. What is this solution you talked about? And why does it involve my son?" My father took a sip of scotch. He looked at my mother, then at Brenda. They exchanged a look of conspirators. "Son," my father started, using that reasonable, businesslike tone he used when he was trying to screw someone over in a deal. "We know things have been strained, and we know you think we favor Brenda." "You do favor Brenda," I said. "That's a fact, not a thought." "Brenda has had a hard life," my mother interjected. "And now, with this infertility diagnosis, she has nothing, Robert. No husband, no career, no child. She is empty." "I'm sorry for that," I said again. "But I can't fix her biology." "No," Brenda said, her voice gaining strength. She sat up, the blanket falling away. "But you can fix my heart." She stood up and walked toward me. I tensed. "Robert," she said, her eyes gleaming with something that looked like madness. "Mom and Dad told me about the baby. A boy. A Sterling boy. My last name is Sterling, yes. But he's my son. We've been talking," my father said, stepping forward, "about legacy, about fairness. You have everything, Robert. You have the successful business, the wife, the money, and now the heir. And Brenda," Dad continued, "she has nothing. It's not fair, is it? In a family, we share the burdens and the blessings." I frowned. "What are you getting at?" My mother took a deep breath. "We want you to consider a co-parenting arrangement." I laughed, a short, barking laugh. "Co-parenting? Sarah and I are the parents. There is no co." "Just listen," Brenda said, stepping closer. "Sarah is busy, isn't she? She'll want to go back to work eventually. And you work long hours. You need help. We are willing to offer financial support," my father said. "Substantial support. We will set up a trust fund for the boy. Full college tuition. Ivy League. A down payment on a house. Everything. $1 million, Robert. Put into a trust the day he is born." My eyes narrowed. $1 million? My father was liquid, but he wasn't that liquid. He was leveraging something. "And in exchange?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "In exchange," my mother said, "Brenda is named as a legal guardian, a second mother. She helps raise him. She has him 3 days a week here at the big house. She gets to be part of his life. Intimately. She gets to be a mother." "I've already picked out a name," Brenda said softly, smiling at me. "I want to call him William, after Grandpa." I stared at them. I looked from my father's arrogant face to my mother's pleading eyes, to Brenda's delusional smile. They weren't asking to babysit. They were asking to buy shares in my child. They wanted to partition my son like a piece of real estate. You want me, I said slowly, to give my sister, who ruined my wedding and has a history of mental instability, legal custody of my child? For money. It's not for money, Brenda snapped. It's for family. Sarah can have other kids. She's fertile. I can't. This is my only chance, Robert. Why are you being so greedy? Greedy. I felt the anger rising, hot and fast. You want to steal my son because you're bored and lonely. Not steal, my father said sternly. Share. It's the Christian thing to do, Robert. Helping the less fortunate. Sarah will never agree to this, I said. She doesn't have to know the legal details, my mother said quickly. We can just say Brenda is helping out as a glorified nanny. But on paper, we need the security. We need to know you won't take him away from us. So you want me to lie to my wife, take your bribe, and hand over my son to a woman who wore a wedding dress to my wedding? I looked at Brenda. And you picked a name? William. It's a strong name, she said defensively. His name is going to be Leo, I said. And he will never, ever set foot in this house. I turned to leave. If you walk out that door, my father roared, his mask slipping. You are cut out. Completely. No inheritance. Nothing. I stopped at the doorway. I turned back and smiled. It was a cold smile. Dad, I said. I drive a Porsche that I bought with cash. I have a business that billed more last year than yours did in 5. I don't need your money. Keep your inheritance. You're going to need it to pay for the nursing home, because Brenda sure as hell isn't going to take care of you. I walked out. I heard Brenda scream behind me. A glass shattered against the wall. I marched down the driveway, my heart pounding. I got into my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking. I thought it was over. I thought I had won. But as I drove away, my phone rang. It was my cousin Tom, the neutral one. Robert, Tom whispered. Are you okay? I saw you leave. I'm fine, Tom. They're insane. Listen, Tom said, his voice trembling. I shouldn't tell you this. Aunt Linda would kill me. But I was at the house earlier today helping move some furniture. So, Robert, they didn't just decide this today. I moved a crib upstairs, into the guest room next to Brenda's. I froze. What? It's a nursery, Rob. Painted blue. They have clothes, diapers, a stroller, and the wall. What about the wall, Tom? Brenda painted a mural on it. It says William's room. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded slightly. They hadn't just proposed an idea. They had prepared for it. They were so sure I would break, or they were planning to take him regardless. Thanks, Tom, I said, and hung up. I dialed Mark, my college roommate, my best friend, my lawyer. Mark, I said when he picked up, I need a restraining order, and I need it tonight. The drive home from my parents' house felt like escaping a crime scene. The knowledge that a nursery, William's room, was sitting in that house, waiting for my unborn son, made me feel physically ill. It wasn't just delusion. It was premeditation. When I got home, Sarah was asleep on the couch, a book resting on her belly. I stood there watching her for a moment, the fierce protective instinct surging through me. I couldn't tell her about the nursery. Not yet. Her blood pressure was already a concern. I went into my study and poured a drink. I didn't drink it. I just held the cold glass, staring at the wall, replaying the conversation. Sarah can have other kids. The entitlement was staggering. The next morning, the war began. It didn't start with a bang, but with a notification. I woke up to Sarah crying in the kitchen. Sarah, I rushed in. What is it? Is it the baby? She held up her phone, her hand shaking. Why would they say this? Why would anyone say this? I took the phone. It was Facebook. A long, rambling post from my mother, tagged with 50 different family members and friends. It breaks a grandmother's heart when her own son uses an innocent child as a weapon. We have tried so hard to be supportive of Robert and his wife, despite their cruelty to our fragile daughter Brenda. We offered to help, to be involved, to set up a college fund, but Robert spat in our faces. He said we aren't good enough to see his child. He is keeping our grandson from us out of spite. Please pray for our family, and pray that Robert finds Jesus and opens his heart. Beneath it, hundreds of comments. OMG, so sad. How can a son be so cruel? Grandparents' rights are real. You should sue. And then, a comment from Brenda. I just want to love my nephew. I've bought him so many gifts. I just want to be an auntie. Why does she hate me so much? She didn't say he. She said she, implying Sarah was the problem. They're painting us as monsters, Sarah sobbed. People are messaging me, Robert. People I went to high school with. They're asking why I'm keeping the baby from your sick sister. Don't read it, I said, taking the phone away. Sarah, look at me. This is what they do. They manipulate the narrative. But my mom saw it, Sarah said. My mom is furious. Good, I said. We need Helen furious. I called Mark, my lawyer. You saw it? I asked. I saw it, Mark said. His voice was crisp, professional. It's defamation, borderline harassment. But Robert, the grandparents' rights angle. In our state, it's tricky. If they can prove a pre-existing relationship with the child, they might have a case for visitation. But since the child isn't born yet, they have nothing. They set up a nursery, Mark. A full nursery. They're calling him William. Mark was silent for a moment. That's evidence of obsession. We can use that. I'm drafting a cease and desist. But Robert, you need to lock down your life. Cameras, alarms, everything. If Brenda is unstable and desperate, she might not wait for the courts. I spent the next 2 days turning my home into a fortress. I installed Ring cameras at every angle. I alerted the security guard at our gated community, giving him photos of my parents and Brenda and the license plates of their cars. If these people show up, I told the guard, a burly guy named Mike, you call the police first, then me. Understood, Mr. Sterling, Mike said. Then the packages started arriving. Amazon boxes, baby clothes, toys, a high-end stroller, all addressed to Baby William Sterling. Sarah opened the first one and burst into tears. Who is William? Why do they keep calling him William? It's a power play, I said, throwing the clothes back into the box. They're trying to claim him. I was taping up the box to return it when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, is this Robert? A rough, tired voice. Who is this? It's Greg. I froze. Greg, Brenda's ex-husband. I hadn't spoken to him since the divorce 3 years ago. He had disappeared, moved 2 towns over, and fell off the map. Greg, I said. Wow, it's been a while. I heard, Greg said. News travels fast. People are talking about your mom's post. It's all lies, Greg. You know them. I know, Greg said. He sounded heavy, broken. Robert, I need to tell you something. I signed an NDA during the divorce settlement. Your dad made sure of that. An NDA? My father was thorough. Greg, if it's about safety, NDAs are void if they cover up a crime or a danger to others. I don't know about the law, Greg said. I just know. Look, Brenda didn't just struggle to conceive with me. What do you mean? Can we meet? Greg asked. Not on the phone. Somewhere public. Diner on 4th? In an hour. See you there. I grabbed my keys. Sarah, I'm going to meet Mark. I lied again. I'll be back in an hour. I drove the Porsche to the diner. It was a stark contrast to the rusty Ford F-150 Greg pulled up in. He looked terrible. He had aged 10 years in the last 3. His hands were stained with grease, and his eyes were hollow. We sat in a booth. I ordered coffee. He ordered water. You look good, Rob, Greg said, eyeing my suit. Done well for yourself. I escaped, I said. You did too. Barely, Greg muttered. He leaned in. Listen, the reason we got divorced, it wasn't just the fighting. It wasn't just the stress of IVF. My mom said it was because you didn't support her dream. Greg scoffed. A bitter, dry sound. Support her dream? Robert, she stopped taking her birth control 3 months into our dating. She trapped me, but that I could forgive. I wanted kids too. He looked around the diner to make sure no one was listening. The real reason we split, Greg whispered, was because of what happened at my sister's house. Your sister? Jenny? Yeah. Jenny was pregnant at the time, 8 months along. Brenda, she was jealous. We went over for a barbecue. Brenda was drunk. She started making comments about how Jenny didn't deserve the baby. How Jenny was too fat, too stupid. I felt a chill run down my spine. Classic Brenda. It got worse, Greg said, his voice trembling. Jenny was walking down the deck stairs to the backyard. Brenda was behind her. I was at the bottom near the grill. I looked up, and I saw Brenda's hand. I stopped breathing. What? She pushed her, Robert. The diner noise faded out. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. She pushed her. I repeated. It wasn't a hard shove, Greg said, tears forming in his eyes. But it was enough. Jenny stumbled. She caught the railing, thank God. She didn't fall, but she twisted her ankle bad. She went into premature labor from the shock. The baby was fine eventually, but in that moment, I saw Brenda's face. What did she look like? She was smiling, Greg whispered, just for a second, before she started screaming, "Oh my God, are you okay?" She smiled. I felt sick, physically sick. My sister wasn't just a narcissist. She was a psychopath. Does my family know? I asked. Your dad paid for Jenny's hospital bills. He paid off my mortgage. He made me sign the NDA saying I would never discuss the incident, or he'd sue me into oblivion for defamation. He said it was an accident. He said I was seeing things. But you weren't. No, Greg said. I know what I saw. And Robert, if she wants your baby, she doesn't want to raise him. She wants to possess him. And if she can't have him, she won't let anyone else have him either. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a USB drive. What is this? I had security cameras on my deck, Greg said. Your dad made me delete the footage, but I kept a copy, just in case. I stared at the small silver drive. It was a smoking gun. It was the weapon I needed. Greg, I said, you just saved my family. Just keep her away from that kid, Greg said, standing up. She's a monster. I watched him leave. I clutched the USB drive in my hand. I had the ammo. Now I just needed the battlefield. And my parents, in their arrogance, were about to provide it. Driving back from the diner, the USB drive burned a hole in my pocket. I felt a mix of horror and cold, hard determination. I wasn't just dealing with a spoiled brat anymore. I was dealing with a predator. When I got home, the atmosphere had shifted. Sarah was off the couch, pacing the kitchen. My mother-in-law, Helen, was there. Helen is a force of nature. She's a retired corporate litigator who drives a Rolls-Royce Ghost and wears Chanel suits to the grocery store. Unlike my parents, who use money to control, Helen uses money to protect. Robert, Helen said as I walked in. She didn't smile. We need to talk. I know, I said. The Facebook post. It's worse, Sarah said, her eyes red. They called my boss. I stopped. What? Your mother, Sarah said, her voice shaking. She called the HR department at my firm. She told them I was emotionally unstable and that she was concerned for the safety of the unborn child if I returned to work. She tried to sabotage my maternity leave. I looked at Helen. Her face was stone. I've already had my legal team send a warning to your parents, Helen said. But Robert, this is escalating. They are trying to build a case that you two are unfit parents so they can file for emergency custody the moment that baby is born. They won't get it, I said. They have money, Helen said. And they are dirty. They will plant drugs. They will fake witness testimonies. I know their type. I used to eat people like them for breakfast. but they can cause a lot of damage before they lose. I pulled the USB drive out of my pocket. They won't win, I said. I have the nuke. I told them about Greg, about the stairs, about the smile. Sarah covered her mouth, horrifying tears welling up. She tried to kill a baby? She tried to eliminate the competition, I said. And now she sees Leo as her property. We need to go to the police, Helen said. Not yet, I said. The statute of limitations on a stumble might be tricky, and Dad's lawyers will bury it as inconclusive footage. We need to destroy their credibility publicly. We need to make sure no judge in this state would ever sign a custody order for them. How? Sarah asked. My dad is hosting his annual summer gala this Saturday, I said. All his business partners, the local politicians, the country club set. It's his pride and joy. And he invited us, I said. Well, he invited me. Before I left the other night, he slipped an invite into my pocket. He thinks if he flashes enough wealth, I'll come crawling back. You're not going, Sarah said. It's dangerous. I'm going, I said. And I'm going to play the video on the big screen. That's dramatic, Helen said, a small smile playing on her lips. I like it. But first, I said, I need to bait the trap. I unblocked my mother's number. I sent a text. We need to talk. I'm thinking about your offer. The college fund. Maybe we can work something out. Can we discuss it at the gala? It took 3 seconds for a reply. I knew you'd make the right choice for William. See you Saturday. Wear a tux. She called him William again. I felt sick, but I pushed it down. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. I met with Mark. We reviewed the footage. It was grainy, but clear enough. You could see the hand. You could see the push. And the aftermath. Greg wasn't lying. Brenda stood at the top of the stairs for a solid 5 seconds, just watching, before she ran down screaming. Mark was pale when he finished watching it. Jesus, Robert. This is attempted manslaughter. Can we use it? In court? Maybe. In the court of public opinion? Absolutely. But be careful. If you play this, there is no going back. You are nuking the bridge. I want the bridge gone, I said. I want the canyon widened. Saturday arrived. Sarah insisted on coming. I'm not letting you go into the lion's den alone, she said. It's too stressful, I argued. I'm carrying your son, she said, adjusting her maternity gown. It was a deep emerald green, stunning. I am stronger than you think. And I want to see the look on Brenda's face when she realizes she lost. Helen drove us in the Rolls-Royce. My Porsche was too recognizable, and we wanted to arrive with armor. The gala was held at a local country club ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, overpriced champagne, and a sea of fake smiles. My parents were in their element. My father was holding court near the bar. My mother was showing people photos on her phone, probably photos of my ultrasound. And Brenda, she was wearing a long, loose-fitting dress, almost like a maternity dress. She was patting her stomach while talking to an old family friend. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, clutching my arm. Is she pretending? She's mimicking you, I said, my jaw tightening. She's delusional. We walked in. The room went quiet. The prodigal son had returned. My mother rushed over. Robert, you came. She looked at Sarah with disdain, then plastered on a fake smile. And Sarah, you look large. Healthy, Sarah corrected. Come, my father said, ushering us toward the stage. I want to make a toast. I want to announce the good news. What good news? I asked. That our family is whole again, my father beamed. And the trust fund. They led us to the VIP table right next to the stage. A laptop was set up there, connected to the projector which was currently cycling through photos of my father's business achievements. I'm going to the restroom, I said. Hurry back, Brenda said. She reached out and touched Sarah's stomach. Hi, William. Sarah flinched away. Don't touch me. Brenda's eyes narrowed. He's my nephew. I have rights. You have nothing, Sarah said, her voice shaking but brave. I moved to the tech table. The AV guy was a kid, maybe 20. Hey, I said, sliding $100 bill onto the table. My dad wants me to load a special video for the toast. A surprise for the family. Sure thing, Mr. Sterling, the kid said. Just plug in the USB. I plugged it in. I located the file. The _push.mp4. Ready when you are, I said. I walked back to the table. My heart was thumping so hard I thought my tuxedo jacket would rip. My father took the microphone. The room hushed. Welcome, everyone, he boomed. Tonight is a special night. Not just for business, but for family. As many of you know, my daughter Brenda has had a difficult journey. Oh, here we go, Helen whispered, sipping her champagne. But God is good, my father continued. My son Robert and his wife have agreed to let Brenda be a co-guardian to their coming son, William. To share the joy. The crowd applauded politely. Sarah gripped my hand. Her palms were sweating. This is news to us, I said loudly. My father glared at me. Robert, don't spoil the moment. No, I said, standing up. I think we need to clarify the moment. I walked up to the stage. My father tried to block me, but I stepped around him. I took the microphone. My father is lying, I said. The feedback whined. The room gasped. Robert, sit down. My mother hissed from the table. He's lying, I repeated. We did not agree to let Brenda near our son. And tonight, I'm going to show you all why. I looked at the AV kid. I nodded. Don't you dare. Brenda screamed, sensing something was wrong. She stood up, knocking her chair over. The screen behind me flickered. The corporate logo disappeared. And then the grainy footage of a backyard barbecue appeared. The ballroom was dead silent. You could hear the hum of the projector fan. On the screen, the timestamp showed a date 3 years prior. It was a sunny deck. A woman, heavily pregnant, Jenny, Greg's sister, was laughing, holding a plate of food, starting to walk down the wooden stairs. Then Brenda entered the frame. She wasn't laughing. Her face was tight. She walked up behind Jenny. The audience watched, confused at first. Then they saw it. Brenda's hand extended. It wasn't a pat on the back. It was a shove. A calculated, firm push right between the shoulder blades. Jenny pitched forward. The plate flew. She grabbed the railing, twisting violently, her leg buckling. The video had sound. A horrible, sharp scream echoed through the ballroom speakers. Then the camera focused on Brenda. She didn't reach out to help. She stood at the top of the stairs. And for 2 seconds, 2 long high-definition seconds, she smirked. It was a look of pure malice. Then the mask slipped back on. Oh my God! Jenny! Video Brenda screamed, running down the stairs. The screen went black. For a moment no one breathed. Then the room erupted. Oh my God! A woman in the front row whispered. Did she just? I looked at Brenda. She was frozen. Her face was draining of color, turning a sickly gray. That's fake, she shrieked. Her voice cracked, high and desperate. That's AI. He made that with AI. My father rushed me, trying to grab the mic. Turn it off. Cut the feed. I sidestepped him. It's not AI, I said into the mic, my voice booming over the chaos. And I have the witness to prove it. I pointed to the back of the room. The double doors opened. Greg walked in. He looked better than he had at the diner. He was wearing a suit, ill-fitting but clean. He walked down the center aisle, staring straight at Brenda. Greg, Brenda whispered. What are you doing here? Telling the truth, Bren, Greg said loud enough for the room to hear. Finally. He signed an NDA. My father shouted at the security guards. Get him out. He's violating a contract. Contracts don't cover attempted murder. Dad, I yelled back. I looked at the crowd. These were my parents' peers. They're judges. My sister, I said, pointing at Brenda, pushed a pregnant woman down the stairs because she was jealous. She wanted that baby to die. And now, I turned to my parents. Now my parents want to give my son to her. They built a nursery in their house. They call him by a different name. They want to buy him for $1 million. I looked directly at my mother. She was trembling, clutching her pearls. You knew, I said. You paid Greg off. You covered up a crime. You unleashed a monster on the world. And now you want to feed my son to her. We were protecting family, my mother wailed. She didn't mean it. She was sick. She is sick, I said. And she is never, ever coming near my family. Brenda snapped. It happened in slow motion. The realization that her image, her victimhood, her golden child status was shattered. She let out a guttural scream. Not a cry for help, a cry of rage. She lunged. Not at me. Sarah. Sarah was sitting at the table just 5 feet away. Brenda grabbed a steak knife from the table setting. He's mine. Brenda screamed. You don't deserve him. You stole my life. I dropped the mic. I vaulted off the stage. But I wasn't fast enough. Helen was. My mother-in-law, the 60-year-old socialite, moved like a linebacker. She stood up and swung her heavy Chanel purse with all her might. The bag, filled with who knows what, connected squarely with Brenda's face. Crack. Brenda went down like a sack of potatoes. The knife clattered across the floor. Pandemonium. Guests were screaming. My father was clutching his chest. My mother was on her knees, crawling toward Brenda. Security finally arrived, rushing toward us. Don't touch her, I yelled, shielding Sarah. She has a weapon. Sarah was shaking, holding her stomach. I'm okay, she gasped. I'm okay. I looked down at Brenda. She was moaning, blood trickling from her nose. She looked up at me, her eyes unfocused. William, she whispered. I just wanted William. His name is Leo, I said, standing over her. And you will never see him. The sirens started wailing in the distance. Someone had called 911. I looked at my father. He was sitting in a chair, pale, undoing his tie. He looked at me, pleading. Robert, we can fix this. The scandal. Think of the business. The business. I laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. Dad, look around. You don't have a business anymore. You're done. I put my arm around Sarah. Let's go. We walked out of the ballroom, past the stunned guests, past the waiters who were filming on their phones. Greg was waiting by the door. He nodded at me. Thank you, I said. Watch your back, Greg said. They don't give up easy. We walked out into the cool night air. The Rolls-Royce was waiting. The ride home was quiet. Not the uncomfortable silence of the past, but the heavy silence of adrenaline fading. Sarah was leaning against me, her hand still on her belly. Helen was driving, her knuckles tight on the steering wheel of the Rolls-Royce. Nice swing, I said softly, breaking the tension. Helen glanced in the rearview mirror. I played field hockey in college. Muscle memory. We laughed. It was a weak, shaky laugh, but it broke the dam. Sarah started crying, releasing the terror of the last hour. I held her, stroking her hair. It's over, I promised. They can't touch us now. But the night wasn't done. When we got back to our house, the police were already there. Not for us. They needed statements. Officer Miller, a stern woman with a notepad, sat us down in our living room. We have Miss Sterling in custody, she said. She's being transferred to the psychiatric ward at St. Jude's under a 72-hour hold. But given the video evidence and the assault with the knife, she's looking at serious charges. Assault with a deadly weapon. Attempted injury to a pregnant person. And my parents? I asked. They covered up the first attack. We're looking into that, Miller said. Mr. Greg Miller provided us with the NDA and proof of payment. That's obstruction of justice. It's going to be a messy investigation. Good, I said. Burn it all down. The next morning, the fallout began in earnest. The video hadn't stayed in the ballroom. Someone, probably one of the waiters, had uploaded it to TikTok. It had 2 million views by breakfast. #EvilSister was trending. My phone blew up, not with threats this time, but with apologies. Aunt Linda, who had called me a terrible son, sent a text. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Is Sarah okay? I didn't reply. They were only sorry because the truth was out. Then came the call from Mark, my lawyer. Robert, he said, sounding cheerful. You're not going to believe this. Try me. Your father's investors are pulling out. The video went viral in the business community. No one wants to be associated with a family that covers up attempted infant homicide. His stock is tanking. Karma, I said. And there's more. Your parents are frantically trying to liquidate assets to pay for a criminal defense attorney for Brenda. But because of the investigation into the cover-up, their accounts have been frozen pending an audit. So they're broke. Cash poor and asset frozen, Mark said. They can't hurt you financially anymore. I hung up and walked out to the patio. Sarah was drinking tea, looking out at the garden. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by a fierce calm. How are you? I asked. I'm ready, she said. Ready to be a mom. Without them. I sat beside her. I blocked them all. Every number. Every email. Even the cousins. Good. A week later I received a letter. Not a text, a physical letter. It was from the county jail. Brenda. Sarah was napping, so I opened it. The handwriting was jagged. Frantic. Robert. They put me in here with awful people. The food is terrible. Mom says you froze their accounts. How could you? I'm your sister. I just wanted to help. I just wanted to be a mom. You stole my baby. You stole William. When I get out, I'm coming for him. God told me he's mine. I didn't feel fear reading it. I felt nothing. I walked into the kitchen, struck a match and burned the letter in the sink. I watched the ashes wash down the drain. Mark, I said into the phone a minute later. Brenda sent a letter violating the restraining order. Send me a picture, Mark said. That's another 5 years on her sentence. Done. That afternoon I went to the dealership. I sold the Porsche. It was a great car. It symbolized my success. But it also symbolized my need to prove something to them. To show them I was good enough. I traded it in for a Volvo SUV. The safest car on the road. When I drove it home, Sarah laughed. A Volvo? Really? You're officially a suburban dad. I am, I said, kissing her forehead. And I love it. The aftermath wasn't just about legal battles or financial ruin for my parents. It was about the silence. The beautiful, peaceful silence of a phone that didn't ring with demands. The security of a home that was truly ours. My parents were isolated. Their friends abandoned them. They were left alone in that big, empty mansion with the nursery that would never be used, drowning in legal fees and their own bitterness. And us? We were just beginning. The hospital room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of the monitor and the soft hum of the air conditioning. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. Outside, the world was asleep. Inside, my entire universe had just shifted on its axis. I was holding him, Leo. Not William. Not an heir. Not a pawn in a twisted game of emotional chess. Just Leo. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of pure, unadulterated innocence. He had Sarah's chin and my eyes, but mostly he looked like himself. I remember looking at the door of the hospital room. In a normal life, that door would be revolving with excited grandparents, flowers, and balloons. But I had hired private security to stand outside the maternity ward. I had listed us as Jane and John Doe in the hospital registry. For a brief second, a phantom pang of sadness hit me. I grieved the grandparents my son would never have. I grieved the idea of the family I was supposed to have. But then, I looked down at Leo's sleeping face, and the grief evaporated, replaced by a fierce, terrifying clarity. My job wasn't to give him a family. My job was to protect him from the wrong family. The first few weeks at home were a blur of sleepless nights, dirty diapers, and a level of exhaustion that felt like a hallucination. But it was happy exhaustion. There were no surprise visits. No passive-aggressive texts about how we were holding the baby wrong. No demands to hand him over. My mother-in-law, Helen, stayed with us for the first 2 weeks. And let me tell you, the difference was night and day. Helen didn't demand to hold the baby. She did the laundry. She didn't critique Sarah's breastfeeding. She brought her water and snacks. She was a fortress of support. One afternoon, while Sarah was napping and I was rocking Leo in the living room, Helen sat down opposite me with her iPad. "Robert," she said, her voice low, "you need to see this." I braced myself. "Is it Brenda? Did she escape?" "No," Helen said. "Brenda is currently heavily medicated in a state facility. Her trial has been postponed indefinitely pending mental competency hearings. She isn't going anywhere. This is about your parents." She turned the iPad toward me. It was a real estate listing. Zillow. The photo was unmistakable. The sprawling colonial estate. The manicured lawns. The wrought iron gates I had walked through just months ago to hear their insane proposal. For sale. Price cut. "They're selling the house?" I asked, feeling a strange mix of shock and validation. "Not just selling," Helen said, scrolling down. "Look at the description. Sold as is. Cash offers preferred for quick close. And look at the public records." She tapped a few times. "Foreclosure proceedings initiated by the bank." I stared at the screen. My father, the man who preached about legacy and financial dominance, was losing his kingdom. "How?" I whispered. I knew they were liquidating assets for Brenda's legal fees, but the house? They've lived there for 30 years. "It gets better," Helen said, though her tone was grim. "Or worse, depending on how you look at it. My contacts in the city told me something interesting. Apparently, your parents took out a second and third mortgage on the house over the last 5 years." "Why?" "To pay for Brenda," Helen said. "The IVF treatments. The sham healers. The lifestyle maintenance after her divorce. And hush money." "Hush money." "Greg wasn't the only one they paid off, Robert. There were other incidents. Minor ones compared to the stairs, but costly. Fender benders Brenda caused while intoxicated. Staff she abused at country clubs. Your father has been bleeding money for a decade to keep the golden child's reputation pristine." I sat back, clutching Leo a little tighter. All those years, they acted like I was the selfish one for not contributing. All those years, they looked down on me for starting my own business instead of joining my father's firm. But the truth was, they were drowning. They were broke. And that $1 million trust fund they promised for William? It never existed. It was a lie. A bait to get me to sign over custody so they could perhaps use the baby to secure a loan or restore their image. They wanted to use my son as a prop to save their social standing, I realized aloud. "Exactly," Helen said. "And now the bill has come due." 2 days later, Mark called me. "Robert, you're going to want to sit down." "I'm feeding Leo." "Go ahead." "Your father filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy this morning. The business is being dissolved. The house is going to auction if they don't sell it in 30 days. "Wow." "And—" Mark hesitated. "He tried to reach out to me. He wanted me to pass a message to you." "Let me guess. He wants money." "He wants a meeting," Mark said. He said, and I quote, "Tell Robert he has one. We are destitute. If he has any shred of decency, he will help his aging parents not end up on the street." I looked around my living room, my modest, safe, warm living room. I looked at the Volvo in the driveway. "Tell him," I said, my voice steady, "that I am busy raising my son. Tell him that if he needs money, he can ask Brenda. After all, she's the one he invested everything in." "Ruthless," Mark said. "I love it. I'll send the message." A month later, on a Saturday, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I put Leo in his car seat, strapped him into the Volvo, and drove. I didn't go to see them. I just drove past the old neighborhood. There were moving trucks in the driveway of the estate. Not professional movers, just a couple of beat-up U-Hauls. I slowed down. I saw my father carrying a box. He looked small, defeated. He was wearing jeans. I had never seen him in jeans in my life. He looked like an old man who had lost his way. My mother was standing by the porch, yelling at one of the movers. She was clutching a vase. Even in ruin, she was trying to control the uncontrollable. I watched them for a moment. I waited for the anger to bubble up. I waited for the satisfaction. But there was nothing. No anger. No joy. Just a profound sense of indifference. They were strangers. Just two people moving out of a house they couldn't afford. I looked in the rearview mirror. Leo was asleep, a little trail of drool on his chin. "We're good, buddy," I whispered to him. I pressed the gas pedal and drove away. I didn't look back. The final blow, or rather, the final confirmation, came a few weeks later. We received a notification from the victim advocate assigned to Brenda's case. Brenda had been declared mentally unfit to stand trial for the foreseeable future. She was being permanently committed to a high-security psychiatric facility 2 states away. The advocate attached a summary of her therapy sessions, as permitted by the court since we were the victims. One line stood out. Patient continues to insist that her son, William, is being held captive by her brother. She spends her days knitting blue booties and speaking to an empty chair she calls father. She was gone. The sister I grew up with, if she ever really existed, was gone. She was trapped in a prison of her own delusion. A delusion my parents had fed and watered for 30 years until it grew into a monster that devoured them all. I closed the email. Sarah walked in holding 2 mugs of coffee. She looked over my shoulder. "Is it over?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, deleting the email. "It's over." We walked out into the backyard. I had re-landscaped it myself over the last few months. I built a small playground in the corner, a swing set, a sandbox. It was humble compared to the estate I grew up on, but it was built on solid ground. It wasn't leveraged. It wasn't fake. "You know," Sarah said, leaning her head on my shoulder, "Leo is going to ask about them one day, about his grandparents, his aunt." "I know," I said, "and I'll tell him the truth." "Which is?" "That they were sick," I said, "and that we loved him too much to let them make him sick too." The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the garden. It was the same sun that set over my parents' foreclosed mansion and over the barred windows of Brenda's facility. But here it felt warmer. I had lost my parents. I had lost my sister. I had lost my inheritance. But as I looked at my wife and the baby monitor on the table, I realized I was the richest man in the world. 3 years later, I'm standing on the deck of our home, watching Leo. He's 3 now. A ball of energy with messy brown hair and a laugh that sounds like pure mischief. He's pushing a toy truck through the dirt, narrating a complex construction project only he understands. Next to him is his little sister, Maya. She's just 6 months old. Yes, we had another one. And no, my parents don't know she exists. It's been 3 years of absolute silence. No contact. People often ask me, usually late at night after a few drinks when the polite filters drop, if I regret it. They ask, "But they're your parents, Robert. Don't you miss them? Don't you worry about them?" And I look them in the eye and say, "No," because here is the truth that nobody tells you in greeting cards or holiday movies. Family is an act of service, not just an act of biology. We found out through the grapevine, Aunt Linda, who eventually came around and is now a decent part of our lives, where my parents ended up. They are living in a 2-bedroom rental condo in a retirement community about an hour away. My father works part-time as a consultant, trying to scrape together enough for their bills. My mother is apparently a recluse, embarrassed to be seen by her old social circle. They sent a card on Leo's first birthday. Just one. It arrived in the mail with no return address. Inside, there was no money, no apology, just a photo of my father holding me when I was a baby. On the back, it said, "You only get one father. Don't throw it away." It was a final attempt at manipulation. A guilt trip sent via postage stamp. I didn't burn that one. Kept it. I put it in a box in the attic. Not because I wanted to remember him, but because I wanted to remember the lesson. The lesson is that blood is thicker than water is a lie. The full quote, historically, is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." The bonds you choose, the soldiers you fight beside, the spouse you marry, the friends who stand by you, are stronger than the bonds you are born into. I walked down the steps into the yard. Leo looked up. "Daddy, help dig." "I'm coming, buddy," I said. I knelt in the dirt. I was wearing a nice pair of chinos, and I knew Sarah would roll her eyes at the grass stains, but I didn't care. I dug into the earth. I thought about Brenda. She's still in the facility. From what I hear, she's deteriorated. She doesn't recognize people anymore. The tragedy of her life is that she was never given the chance to be a person. She was only ever a projection of my parents' ego. They destroyed her by never telling her no. I looked at Leo. He wanted the shovel I was holding. He grabbed for it, screaming, "Mine!" This was the moment. The small, everyday moment where parenting actually happens. I could have given it to him to keep him quiet. I could have distracted him. Instead, I held the shovel firm. "No, Leo," I said gently but firmly. "Daddy is using it. You have to wait your turn. We share." Leo's face crumpled. He geared up for a tantrum. He screamed. He threw his truck. I didn't flinch. I didn't panic. I didn't try to bribe him with a cookie. I just sat there, calm and present. "I know you're mad," I said. "It's okay to be mad, but you still have to wait." After a minute, the storm passed. Leo sniffled, wiped his nose, and picked up his truck. "Okay, Daddy." I smiled. "Good boy." It was a tiny victory, but it was the anti-venom. It was the cure to the sickness that had plagued the Sterling line for generations. I was teaching him boundaries. I was teaching him that he wasn't the center of the universe, and that was okay. I stood up and brushed the dirt off my knees. Sarah came out to the deck holding Maya. She waved. I waved back. I realized then that the inheritance I fought for wasn't the money. It wasn't the estate. It wasn't the status. The inheritance was this: the freedom to raise my children in a home where love isn't transactional, where mistakes are forgiven, not leveraged, where no is a complete sentence. My brother-in-law, Greg, came over for a barbecue last week. He's remarried now to a wonderful woman. They have a dog. He looks 10 years younger. We were standing by the grill, drinking beers. "You ever think about the alternative timeline?" Greg asked me. "The one where you gave in? Where Brenda is co-parenting Leo?" I shuddered. "Every day." "We survived, man," Greg said, clinking his bottle against mine. "We actually survived." "We didn't just survive," I said, looking at our wives laughing on the patio. "We upgraded." As the sun dipped below the fence line, I picked Leo up and swung him around until he squealed with delight. "Again! Again!" he shouted. "Again!" I promised. And that is my story. It's not a fairy tale. It's a horror story with a happy ending. But it's my ending. I wrote it. I fought for it. And I'm living it. For anyone out there who is holding on to a toxic relationship because you're afraid of the guilt, or afraid of being alone, or afraid of what people will say, let me tell you this: the view from the other side is beautiful. The air is cleaner here. The silence is sweeter. And the love is real. I'm Robert Sterling. I'm a father. I'm a husband. And I am finally, completely free. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my journey, it's the concept of generational trauma and the power of breaking the cycle. My parents weren't just mean. They were perpetuating a cycle of control and narcissism where children were viewed as extensions of themselves rather than independent human beings. By refusing to set boundaries with Brenda, they didn't help her. They disabled her. They robbed her of the ability to cope with reality. Many of us are taught that honor thy father and mother means blind obedience. But true honor is living a life of integrity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, your children, and even your toxic family is to walk away. Creating a no-contact boundary isn't an act of punishment. It's an act of protection. It creates a space where you can heal and where your children can grow up without inheriting the wounds of the past. You have the power to stop the poison from trickling down to the next generation. It stops with you. It's hard. It's lonely at first. But the peace you find on the other side is worth every ounce of struggle. Now, I want to hear from you. This was a heavy story, and I appreciate you walking this path with me. I want to know, have you ever had to make the hard choice to cut off a toxic family member to protect your peace? Or do you believe families should stick together no matter what? Please leave a comment below. Share your perspective. If this story resonated with you, or if you learned something about the importance of boundaries, simply comment the word good below. It tells me that sharing this pain was worth it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. We are building a community of survivors here. Until next time, protect your peace. You deserve it.